Hi, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I'd like to talk about why I won't be eating at a restaurant in Canada again. I wanted to try to make a video that other people could replicate or add to, so for this I'm using AI. I realize that AI can be wrong about a lot of things, but what it has to say here meshes with things that I've heard humans say to me to my face. So I started off asking Google AI, what's it called when someone has to pay their employer to work? And it got off to a good solid start, saying that it's a scam or illegal employment practice. And I'll just skip down to the pertinent part where I give it some context. So I said, this is about having to pay each shift in order to work. It says if I'm being forced to pay money out of my own pocket at the end of or before every shift, this is highly predatory and is likely an illegal wage deduction kickback scheme or employment fraud. Oh, but wait. Under Canadian employment standards, employers must pay workers for their time. Workers never pay employers to work a shift. To narrow down exactly what is happening, look at the two distinct categories this usually falls under. If you're an employee, server, bartender, retail, delivery, then it says if you're an independent contractor, like a barber, hairstylist, tattoo artist, exotic dancer, I get that. What you should do right now, stop paying in cash. If you must pay, do it via e-transfer or get a signed written receipt specifying exactly what the fee is for. You need a paper trail. Keep a log, file a complaint. But it says, could you tell me what industry or job this is for and what the employer claims the fee is for? Knowing if you have an employment contract will also help me guide you on how to fight it. Now, you may or may not have heard of venue fees that are coming to more restaurants, so that it's a fee, usually 2 or 3%, that's being added to a restaurant bill, but customers don't usually notice it, and restaurants claim that it's to offset their own costs. But that's not what I'm talking about here. Here, and I tried to lay this out so that AI will give me more accurate answers. I wrote, this is in Alberta, Canada, and in the industry in Canada. Canadian-born citizens with a legal right to work in Canada who are in the restaurant industry. Please restrict your answers to truth and do not tell me what you think I want to hear. I'm a logic-focused human. There is something called a tip-out fee in restaurants. I've personally spoken to people in the industry. When a customer purchases a meal in a restaurant and pays with cash or debit, there is a percentage fee based on what the total check cost is. It's colloquially called owing money to the kitchen. Different restaurants, including large chain restaurants, charge their servers between 3.5% to 20% per table per customer's bill. For example, if 2 customers enter a restaurant and sit at a table together, and their total bill after taxes is $100, not hard to do with food prices being so high, the server owes management a fixed percentage per shift, per table, say 20%. So on that table, that server owes the restaurant management $20. If the extra tip left by the customer is less than $20, or I should have said if the tip left by the customer is less than $20, the server owes the management what's owing. Management claims the percentage is divided between kitchen staff, hosting staff, etc. The house or management gets a cut as well. It's possible for a server to end up owing money at the end of a shift, and the money owing comes off their paycheck. This practice has been going on in Alberta, and I assume in Canada, for at least 4 years. I trust the sources I've spoken to. They've also told me if they object to the tip-out practice, they will lose their job. AI said, I will address this exactly as requested, focusing strictly on the objective logic, numbers, and the precise truth of current Alberta legislation and restaurant industry mechanics. The mechanism you are describing is entirely real, highly prevalent across Canada, and is fundamentally legal under current Alberta law. The mathematical truth of sales-based tip-outs. Your sources are 100% correct about the math. In the Canadian restaurant industry, tip-outs are calculated as a percentage of gross sales, not a percentage of the tips actually received. The logic. Restaurants structure it this way because it prevents servers from lying about how much cash tip money they made on a shift. By tying the math strictly to the point of sale, POS, machines, hard data, total table sales, the software forces a fixed calculation. The reality of net negative tables. If a restaurant has an 8% sales-bound tip out and a table runs a $200 bill, the server owes the house pool $16. If that table leaves a zero tip, stiffed bill, or a 5% tip, $10, the server still owes $16. Mathematically, the server has just paid $6 out of their own pocket to serve that specific table. The legal truth in Alberta. The reason this is allowed to happen comes down to a specific legal gap in the province. Unlike Ontario, Quebec, or British Columbia, which have explicit statutes protecting worker tips, Alberta has no legislation in its Employment Standards Code that regulates or protects tips. Tips are not wages. Under the Alberta Employment Standards Code, tips and gratuities are legally classified as completely distinct from hourly wages. Because they are not wages, the provincial government does not dictate how they are pooled, shared, or if management can take a cut. The house cut is legal because there are no tip protection laws. Alberta restaurant owners are legally permitted to mandate a tip pool, decide the percentages, distribute it to the back of the house, kitchen, hosts, and even pocket a percentage for the house or management salaries. Where the practice crosses into illegal territory. While taking the money from a server's tip earnings is legal in Alberta, taking the money directly off their hourly base wage paycheck is completely illegal. Deductions from earnings. Under Alberta's rules for deductions from earnings, an employer cannot deduct money from a worker's legal hourly wage for cash shortages, faulty work, or business costs. The technical distinction. If a server makes $0 in tips all night but is forced to pay a $20 sales percentage fee, management cannot deduct that $20 from the server's minimum wage base pay, $15 per hour, on their bi-weekly paycheck. The enforced loophole. To circumvent this payroll law, management requires the server to physically hand over the cash or debit equivalent of the owed percentage at the end of the night before they cash out, ensuring it never touches the official payroll ledger. The threat of termination. Your sources are entirely correct that objecting to this will result in losing their job. Because Alberta allows employers to create their own house tip policies, agreeing to the tip-out structure is a standard condition of employment. If an employee refuses to comply with a company policy, the employer can legally terminate them without cause, provided they pay the standard statutory termination notice or severance. Current status. Political efforts such as the private members' Bill 210 protecting workers' tips have been introduced in the Alberta legislature to try and ban employers from taking a cut or forcing negative out-of-pocket balances. But until such legislation is fully passed and amended into the active code, the sales-based tip-out system remains standard industry practice. If you want to look into the exact payroll mechanics or text of the law, I can provide the specific references to Alberta's deduction rules or the status of Bill 210. So then I asked, do you know if this tip-out is a common practice in the United States at the current time, July 2026? Yes. Sales-based tip-out structures are highly common and standard practice across the United States. However, because the United States is governed by the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, alongside varying state laws, the rules dictating how this practice operates are much more strict, rigid, and legally defined than they are in Alberta. Talks about how Alberta's lack of tip legislation allows the practice to occasionally force servers into the negative or allow management to take a cut. So I said I needed some time to digest this because it gives me indigestion thinking about it. There have been times when we've been in a restaurant and the service has been so bad, even when it's really, really slow. The service has been absolutely horrible. And we haven't left a tip because we don't want to encourage really, really bad service. But given what I found out recently, it gives me a new insight into why so many people in the service industry and restaurants seem to have checked out. I guess my heart really wouldn't be in it either. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not going to be eating at a restaurant in Canada again. I don't want to encourage this kind of behavior, and quite frankly, it gives me indigestion just thinking about it. Be safe. Bye for now.